talking about bringing childcare into the home.
Right.
So if you would, could you just sort of tell me a little bit of what the difference is between having, say, a babysitter and having a nanny in your home?
Certainly. A babysitter is something that's more temporary. You may be going out for the evening, you want someone to come over and watch the kids for a little while, a few hours, or maybe occasional help here and there. But that to me is more babysitting, and generally, friends that you know in the neighborhood, high school students usually, or even college students, they fill that role pretty well. Still always a good idea to check references no matter who it is and no matter how long they're going to be with your child. Always check the references and get to know the person first before you leave them alone with your children in your home. Now, a nanny is generally considered someone on more of a permanent basis. We think of Mary Poppins or Nanny McPhee or some of the more popular movie nannies that we know about. But it's very important that you do your research, because you are going to give this person access to your home, access to your children, oftentimes without you being there. Although some people have a nanny there if they're doing a home business, for example, and maybe they want to be able to focus on their business, so they may actually be in and around the home while the nanny is present. But even so, you need to do your homework and you need to check on this person, because again, they're going to be providing more permanent long-term care, one thing, and then hopefully this person is going to help with your child's growth and development, their cognitive development, social development, anything that you would normally want to provide for your child. This nanny is going to need to be a part of that process too. So you need to take that into consideration and consider their qualifications and what they're going to do to help support your child's healthy growth and development.
So essentially, a nanny is a professional, somebody that's had training and certification probably.
Yes, I would say a nanny is a professional. They're, again, going to be usually a more mature person, and again, someone that's going to be coming on a more regular basis for a permanent length of time into your home to care for your children. Some nannies may involve transporting your kids. That's another thing you need to think about too, is the driving age of the person, their driving skills, their type of vehicle. Are they going to make sure they follow your preferences with regards to car seats and seat belts and safe places to go and take the children, things like that? So that's something else you wanted to consider.
I would also imagine that you're probably going to have a nanny would be more inclined to probably help with meal times and bathing, that kind of thing?
Yes, they could very well be involved. And another thing you want to be very clear about, even with a babysitter, is what are your expectations? Make sure you actually put those in writing. Especially if it's going to be a nanny, it's going to be a more permanent arrangement. You may want to actually have a contract with the person individually to protect you and to protect them, to be very clear on what's expected, what are the hours, those types of things, what are going to be the duties. Some people involve their nannies in helping to prepare dinner for the family when they come home. Some of them do light housework duty, laundry and cleaning up. So you need to be very clear as to what exactly you're expecting the nanny to do with regards to caring for your children and other duties that may fall under that in your home. So it's best to put those things in writing. Be very clear, very understanding of what are the qualifications of this person to satisfy your expectations, what you're looking for out of those duties and responsibilities.
How would you say it would be a good way about finding and matching a nanny that will meet those needs? I mean, do you just answer an ad in the paper, or how would you do it?
Right. Well, again, this is a very important decision, and it's a great option if that's what your family decides to care for children in your home. But you do need to make it very carefully and deliberately. So a couple of suggestions would be, if you're going to place an ad out yourself, you may want to use a generic P.O. box to receive resumes or applications, and/or a generic email, something that won't come back and identify you, and you'd have to continue monitoring over a period of time. So think about that. You always want to meet the person, but until you decide that this is a person you really want coming into your home, you may agree to meet them in sort of a mutual place. A local mutual place could be a restaurant, could be a library, something like that, and meet with them in person first to get to know them and get them get to know you a little bit too. You could also work through an agency that actually provides nannies. Oftentimes agencies are going to have possibly some finder's fees associated with their service, but they may also say, we conduct background checks on everyone that's in our service. You want to find out what is the extent of that background check. Is it just a criminal history, or is it a full fingerprint, usually with the FBI and the Alabama Bureau of Investigators background check? And what sort of things will they allow a person to still work with children that may come up on their background check? In other words, what are their criteria to say, well, we allow these type of offenses on a background check, but we don't allow these? You'd want to be clear about that. You'd also want to know what kind of safety training have they had? Do they have, and are they current with their first aid, their CPR training, particularly with children and infants, because CPR and first aid is different for children and infants than it is for adults. So you want to be sure they don't just say, oh, I'm CPR certified. Well, if they're only certified for adult care, that's not the same as CPR and first aid for a young person. You may also want to know, are you going to need them to administer any medication to your children? You want to make sure they understand, how to do that, and what your dosing requirements are, and that they can safely administer medications to your child. So those are some things you certainly want to consider.
What about references? How important is it to have a reference history from a nanny and have an opportunity to actually contact previous employers?
I would say reference checks are a must. You have got to check out this person. Again, you are entrusting them to the care of your most precious possession, your children. And it's very important that you get to know this person as well as you can. So I would say ask for a reference list, and then when you call those references, I'd ask for them too, to tell you who else do you know that's utilized this service or this particular individual. Don't just take the 2 or 3 that they're going to give you, because they're probably going to give you your top ones. Well, there's others out there probably too. So do a little investigating. It's worth your time and investment to do that. And again, get some time to know this person. Ask if you can, see them interact with your children. Plan some dates where you're actually watching them with your children and see how they interact. You just can't be too careful about who you leave your children with.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because that was going to be my next question.
Mm-hmm.
How about, if this is the first time your children have ever had to deal with a nanny, or to bring a nanny into your home, I guess, any advice as to how to introduce the nanny to the children, and the children to the nanny?
Yes, I think you definitely need to have an introductory period. Let the children get comfortable with the person, and for you to get comfortable with how they interact with your children. And so you can plan, maybe a date at the park and see how they're going to do there. You may want to say, let's meet at the library for a local mommy and me reading, because those may be activities you actually want the nanny to take your children to, that they can participate in. So they have some socializing opportunities, as well as they have opportunities to, again, support their healthy growth and development. So you may want to plan some of those neutral locations where you can interact with them. Now, you may need to be prepared to pay for those times as well, because again, you're using that person's time, and they only get paid when they're actually working usually. So you may want to consider providing a payment for those meet and greet sessions too.
Would it be crossing a line if you're already utilizing a daycare service and asking a teacher in the daycare service if they'd be interested in doing further nanny duties after hours?
Usually it's not allowed for a person who's a child care provider working already with an employer to also care for children that are coming at the facility. That's generally considered a conflict of interest, because someone could perceive preferential treatment for those children or that family because this person cares for them in their home too. So you'd want to be very, very careful about that. Plus, if that person's already spending a good 6 or 8 hours of their day with your child, they may need a break. They may not be as effective still to continue working on and caring for your child in the home. So you would just want to be careful about that.
When it comes to checking out certifications, that kind of thing, is it enough for them to just tell you this, or is there an agency that you can contact to make sure that the CPR is current, the food handling is current, that kind of thing?
You would have to ask to see their actual certification cards. That's what I would recommend. Again, if you're working with an agency, I'd ask them, what are their credentials for people that they are going to be finding jobs for, and how do you know that they've got those certifications current? So anyone who's been through a certification course is usually given a card of some sort that they can carry in their wallet that has an expiration date on it. It usually has some sort of signature, authoritative signature on it. So again, those are common customary documents that are very easy for the person to provide. And if you get a sense that they're trying to hedge or hem and haw about really trying to legitimize what they say about themselves, how they describe themselves, that should be a clear sign that maybe this isn't the best person to meet your needs.
let me change gears. Let's ask, after the nannies come into your home, okay? They passed everything, they've looked great and everything like that, now you're not around.
Right.
All right? But your children do not like the nanny or say certain things about the nanny.
Yeah.
Now, children aren't always truthful, but
Right.
sometimes they can't communicate
Right.
properly.
Yeah.
How much time should you spend with your child talking about their experiences with their nanny?
Certainly, depending on the age of the child, they may not be able to verbally communicate what's going on, but you should get a sense of your children's comfort with the person from their behavior, even at a very young age. You should also look for any signs that concern you. If you notice your child is bruised a lot, or they seem very unhappy when this caregiver comes into the situation, to the home, that ought to tell you to maybe ask a few more questions. Now, of course, you've heard of things like nanny cam, and stuck in teddy bears and things like that. Again, you know, you're giving someone the privilege of coming into your home unsupervised to be with your children. It's a very important decision. So if those are precautions that you feel are warranted, by all means, it's your home, it's your children, you know, you should employ this. But definitely talk with your children if they're able to communicate with you. Learn to look for their signs and their behaviors. And if you, again, are noticing any signs of something that concerns you, then you need to talk to the person about it. I would encourage you to talk to them about it. Don't just say, well, they're not ever coming in here again. Obviously, if it's that much of a threat, yes, you need to do that. But I wouldn't let them think that you don't know what's going on. You need to be involved. And again, I would still encourage unannounced drop-ins, just like for a child care program. You should have the freedom to come home at any time, whether it's just to run in and check on an errand or to grab a bite of lunch or whatever, and feel free to just drop in on the nanny unannounced. Or if they're out in the community and they've gone to an attraction of some sort, feel free to meet them there and have lunch. You know, check on them. Don't just, you know, take for word. But if your children are indicating something's not quite right, you usually need to listen to that because they're trying to tell you something.
Does Childcare Resources provide any guidance for nanny programs?
Certainly, Childcare Resources is happy to help parents with nanny selections as well as other child care options. We don't have nannies we necessarily promote, but we have nanny agencies that we can refer you to. And then again, we can arm you with good information. A lot of the questions we discussed today about what are some things you should look for when choosing a care provider for your children.
And I guess one last question from the nanny's perspective. How important is it for you to also do your due diligence to make sure that you're not going into the home of a crazy family?
Yes, yes. Again, you know, TV tells us lots of Hollywood stories of nannies and all these things they see, and we see Nanny 911 and all this kind of stuff. That's you got to remember that's sensationalized and glamorized. But yes, the nanny needs to protect him or herself too. And again, that's why I say, clearly have written expectations, even in an agreement of some sort that's been legalized with signatures. The nanny also needs to be protected for time off. You know, if they're going to be with this family for an entire year, they, you know, may want some vacation time. You need to work that out in your arrangement, and is that going to be paid vacation or not? So those are some things you need to consider. And they should have a list of questions they want to ask too of the family. You know, tell me what your expectations are. What do you hope to see your children learn when I'm here? What kind of activities you want them to be taking advantage of? So definitely the nanny needs to ask questions too of the family, and they may want to do their own reference checks too, and you know, see if any of the nanny services have served this family. Yes, definitely.
Well, that's all my questions. Is there anything else that we can say on the subject?
Well, again, I just can't reiterate enough, you know, when you're leaving someone to care for your children, it is so important that you do your homework and you make sure you're leaving them with someone that you can truly count on to provide best care for your children.
Thank you so much, Joan.
Well, you're
I
welcome.
appreciate it.